All right. If you watched the last track day video, you know that we ended with a number of issues to fix. So we are gonna start on some of that list and maybe tackle a couple other things. I am going to get this wheel off, and we need to address a brake issue. I don't think I really covered that in the last video, but I've noticed a brake issue with a previous upgrade. Actually, one of the viewers noticed an issue with a brake upgrade, so we're going to get into that first, and then maybe look at replacing this oil cooler with a bigger one, some fuel cooling. We'll see what else we get to, but I want to solve a couple of issues before we take this out to the track again. One issue I found when I took this apart is that my lower ball joint is actually out of this lower control arm. The steering felt kind of off at the end of the day, and now I know why. I have no idea why this came out, so I need to do some research and see if there's a fix or a reason those come out, because that could have been really bad. This should be in because of the way this coilover puts pressure downward on the lower control arm, which means that it should be pushing the lower control arm down all the time, really, as it's on the road, which means that this ball joint should be pushed up. So I'm really not sure why that came out of there, but I definitely need to prevent that in the future. I pulled this lower control arm out of here, and this is the new lower ball joint, and it's completely loose. It doesn't need to be pressed in at all, so I think this worked itself loose out on track and was just moving in here and just kind of wore the inside of this out, since this is aluminum and the ball joint housing itself is steel. So this is really no longer functional. I think probably the problem was caused by me. Might be hard. I think you can see that on camera. It's warped a little bit. Some of this may have been happening on track, but I know I did warp this a little bit when I replaced this lower ball joint last year, or maybe the year before last. It was bad and I replaced it, but I need a proper set of press dies so that I can press this out properly, which I did not have. And I think that led to this problem. So I need to look for a new lower control arm and then maybe get some press dies so I can do this correctly. All right, I've got a new controller in to replace that bad one. Pulled this off of eBay. I think it was 80 bucks or so. And then my old control arm had Dell alum bushings, so I pushed out the rubber ones. They were bad anyway. This just came from some sort of scrap yard that was selling parts on eBay, but pulled the rubber bushings out and put my Dell alums back in. Had to press them out of the old arm and pressed out the bushing here. And this feels pretty good. Had to move the rubber boot over. It was missing the rubber boot, but right now this ball joint feels reasonable, so I'm not going to mess with that right now since that's the problem I'm trying to correct. If it turns out to be bad or wears out pretty quickly, I've got the Moog sitting right there and I'll press it in, but for now we're just going to run. I'm pretty sure that's the OEM one still. So we're going to run that, and this is about ready to slap back in the car. So let's do that. All right, to address the excess oil coming out of the breathers on these valve covers that we covered in the track video, there's no baffling in these billet valve covers. They look awesome, but no baffling in them, so it just means lots of oil comes out of this PCV and goes over to the breather tank over there, and then that fills up, and then we've got oil issue on the windshield and down the right side of the vehicle. So I have the stock valve covers. I never got rid of them, and there is, you can't really see it, but there's a lot of baffling. You can just kind of tell by the shape of them, and there's space in between where there's things happening in here that prevent excess oil coming out of this breather pipe. They are ugly though. They don't look near as good as those. So I'm going to go ahead and paint these and run with them. At least it'll prevent the oil issue, especially on track, even though they're ugly, and I guess I'll just list those on eBay or something since they're not going to work for me. So first step is clean these up and throw some primer on it. Got those scrubbed down with a wire brush, and then a brake clean bath, and then an alcohol bath after that. And now we're just letting some coats of this self-etching primer dry up, and then we'll hit it with the same orange paint that's on the rest of the cart. So even though the shape's ugly, at least it'll visually look similar. After a coat of primer, I set up my heated oven painting booth and got some coats of the orange down on here. So we'll let these bake in my specialty oven for a little bit, maybe throw another coat on there, and then we should be good to go. That'll make these things look a little bit better. I'm still not fond of the shape of them, but they'll be better. And maybe I'll go ahead and mount the coils on these since they have provisions for that, instead of using the chassis mounted coil system I've been using. But I don't know, we'll throw it in there and make some decisions. Quick look inside the valve cover. Everything looks super clean and nice, so that's good news. This is really the first time I've had these valve covers off since I built the motor before I even put it in. So it's good to see things are still looking good in there. You can see no baffling inside of this thing. It's a shame that this piece won't work. It'd probably work great on like a drag car, but on a track where you're running it hard for 15-20 minutes at a time, it's just throwing too much oil without any baffling. Okay, got that valve cover torqued down. Where they painted it doesn't look terrible in there. I still wish it wasn't so lumpy. I did get that coil set up in there, and looks like it's going to fit. So that will allow me to clear some space down there, get those ignition coils away from the heat of the exhaust. And I need to go to the hardware store because I just grabbed this from a pile of bolts, but I don't have enough. Plus, I want to do it in stainless so that it matches the other stainless hardware and looks decent. So I'll take that to the hardware with me and get it matched up, and then we can reroute everything. We'll have to reroute some wires around and up and over, and this hose is going to interfere with where that plugs in there, so I'll have to address that, but should be doable. That's all bolted up. The coil packs are moved up. I had, because of where they were mounted down there, I had this extension harness for the ignition coils, and I was able to remove that doesn't look like I'm going to be able to remove it on the other side. I've got the other side all bolted up, and I might give it a college try just to see, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to leave the extension on the other side. But it looks a lot cleaner down there now. I like it, and I like them away from those hot headers. I did have to loosen up the intake to be able to get that harness, to shorten that harness down. So I'm gonna see if I can remove that extra extension harness, which I don't think I'm gonna be able to do, but I'm gonna give it a try, and then we should be able to bolt everything up and zip tie some stuff back down so it's secure. I've got that slap back in there, and everything's bolted up and tightened down except the brake caliper. And before I really put everything back together, we're going to tackle this brake caliper next. We're going to jump back in time to a video I took before that I took this off, so I can explain to you what's going on with this caliper and why we're going to work on this and replace it. On a previous video that has now been removed from my channel because a viewer noticed a problem, I installed these brakes from I think it's a 5th gen Camaro, or it might have been a 6th gen, I forget now, but I thought they fit up perfectly, but there actually is a problem. These are the rotors from the 5th gen and the calipers from the 5th gen, but there's a spacing issue, and you can actually see it on the wear line here. Let me put this light down. This wear line is too far out, and on the inside you're probably gonna have trouble seeing that, but these the brake pads actually sit out further beyond the rotor, so that's a problem. You're not actually getting full seating of the brake pads on the rotor, and I think that's going to create issues long term. I've done a couple track days on these and they haven't been a problem, but I think it will be a problem long term. It is nice to move to these 4-piston calipers from the 2-piston, but I'm going to revert, sort of, but still be an upgrade from the base C4 brakes. Let me show you what I'm working with over here. I previously had purchased a wheel, and attached to that wheel was actually the hub and everything. It was a C5 wheel, and the seller, I think I paid like $100 for the wheel, and the brake caliper was on there. So this is a C5 brake caliper that I've had just kind of sitting around, and I only needed one wheel. The seller had the right wheel, so I bought the wheel and the brake caliper came attached. Well, the C5 brake caliper, even though it's still a 2-piston, is an upgrade from the J55 brakes on the C4. So we're going to go ahead and throw these on. I bought another one for like $70 on eBay for the other side. So I have a matched pair now. And then some fresh rotors. I still need to get some brake pads. And then there is an adapter that I bought off of eBay as well that'll allow me to bolt these up. And this is a tried and tested method to upgrade the brakes on the C4. Lots of documentation on it, so I'm not going to go in depth on how to do this. But even though it's still a 2-piston, the calipers themselves are bigger, the pads are bigger, and the calipers are stronger, so they give more clamping force. And I can upgrade the rotors in the future. I'm using stock C5 rotors, but I believe the Z51 package went to a larger rotor. So you can upgrade the same calipers on both, but the rotor itself is an extra 1/2 inch larger, so I can upgrade the rotor later. So I'm going to start with just disassembling these a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and paint them before I put them on the car. So disassemble them and get them painted up, and then we can mount them on the car. I've got these calipers wire wheeled down and cleaned up. Hit it with some brake clean. Next, I'm going to hit it with some denatured alcohol, and then we can start primering it. I've got some high temp primer and then some caliper paint. It's going to be orange like everything else. So we'll get this finished up so we can throw these calipers on. Got these taped up where I don't want paint on the bleeder valves and then on the pistons on the inside. So we'll get some primer on here and then some color. These have been painted and hardening for a day or two now, and I went ahead and sanded off the Corvette logo, or it's not really a logo, it's just the words. So now I'm gonna put a couple coats of this 2K clear on here, and then let that sit, and then we should be able to mount these up. I picked these adapters up off of eBay. They seem like a pretty well-made piece. It says that they will work for either the base C5 and C6 brakes or the Z51 package, not the Z06. I have the base calipers. Although I think the Z51 is actually the same caliper, there must be some difference in the bracket or something. I'm not sure. And this doesn't have more than one set of holes, so not fully sure, but I have the base caliper and rotor. So that's what I'm going to put on here. And if I ever wanted to upgrade to Z51, I probably would drop this anyway and just go to like a Willwood or some other aftermarket real race brake setup. So, but the base caliper should be much better than the stock C4 J55 brakes. So that'll be better than the stock. Not as good as those would have been if they actually fit properly. But since I'm not getting full engagement on the pads, who knows how good those actually are. So we'll get the new rotors thrown on and the calipers bolted up, and then we'll move the brake lines over. Okay, before I bolt the caliper fully on, I figured I'd show this. These are Carbotech XP12s, and they are right at the very edge of that rotor. So absolutely fullest engagement at the very edge of the rotor. It should be fine. I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. And obviously, the further out on the rotor pads are, the more force they have rotationally against the rotor. So that's actually better as long as you don't go too far. And the big advantage to the C5, C6 brakes over the J55s on the C4 is a bigger pad. It's still a 2-pot caliper, so really no change there, but the caliper itself is supposed to be a little stronger and definitely bigger pads, even though the rotor size is the same. So this should be an upgrade. Everything I read online says it'll be an upgrade over the stock ones. Now we'll throw the caliper on. We're all bolted together. I've got the brake line moved over. So we will go to the other side. I'm not going to film any of that, but get it slapped on, and then we can move on to bleeding the brakes, throwing some tires on, and then we'll probably need to do an alignment with that new lower control arm just to make sure things are still good on the alignment front. Everything is back on the ground now, and through the alignment plates on there. It had probably close to a 1/4 inch of toe out, so I've got it back to 0 toe where I want it. Now, just need to take this thing for a drive and get those brakes bedded into those new rotors. New pads, new rotors, got to get everything bedded together. So the next thing we're going to do is upgrade these springs. I bought a pair of springs that are 100 pounds heavier than what's in here. I'm finding as I drive around with this big massive wing back here that it's really not enough spring rate in the back anymore. So especially going over, just cruising down the highway, not really racing, going over a significant bump, it'll bottom out the car, the rear diffuser on the street as I'm going down the street. So need to upgrade to a little bit stiffer spring. I went 100 pounds up. That I think will be enough. But this thing generates significant amount of downforce, so we will see out on the racetrack. I really didn't have a problem with it bottoming out on the racetrack, but on the street I do. So we're going to go ahead and throw these in there. Okay, got everything put back together, and I just used a simple tape measure to get it back to the same height it was. I measured everything from this corner on both sides before I took it apart, and then adjusted the coilover seats so that it was back to the same height. Since these are 100 pounds heavier, the seat actually had to come down to get it back to the height because these have less, the new ones have less give under just regular car weight. So that's all set. I will do a full corner balance later. I actually don't have the scales to do it. I've got a friend, or really kind of an acquaintance, that lets me use them sometimes. So I will, I'll get over to his shop and use them when I can, but that's not right now. But we can take it out and drive it and make sure everything's good and settled there before we go corner balance anyway. The last thing we're going to do before we wrap this video up is remake this wire rope tie here. So still over on that side, but on the last track day, I guess 140 mile an hour is too much for these. Plus, well, not really too much. The thimbles, these are called thimbles, I crimped on with this vise, which is not really the right way to do it. I figured it would be strong enough to hold, but apparently it is not. So I have the proper crimping tool for these thimbles now. So actually I think this piece is called the thimble, but either way, we're going to remake this with the proper tool, so it should hold. And then we'll be able to take it out to track days without leaving pieces behind. I don't think it hurt anyone, but definitely don't want to lose those on track either. So we'll get this made up. That's nice and secure now with good quality crimps on there. And I'm probably going to throw that crimper over on that side just to make sure those are good. All right, that's going to do it for this one. It has been several months of work actually in this video. I think I probably started this video in June, and just life getting in the way. I haven't been able to spend a lot of time in the garage, so I've kind of been keeping a bunch of footage for the last couple of months as I do some upgrades, but I think I've got enough now for a video, and it's definitely time to get one out. So hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you on the next one.